I'm Michael, 29, and I need to tell you about how my marriage imploded in the most hypocritical way possible. After 6 years of marriage to Lauren, I thought we had built something solid. We met in college, got married at 23, bought a house in Portland, Oregon, and settled into what I believed was a happy life together. The problem started about 2 years ago when Lauren began working at a tech startup downtown. The company culture was different, very progressive, very open about relationships and sexuality. Lauren came home with stories about her coworkers' unconventional arrangements, thruples, open marriages, polyamorous networks. At first, I thought she was just sharing workplace gossip. "Did you know that Zoe and her husband have been seeing other people for 3 years?" she'd say over dinner. "And they're happier than ever. They say it's made their marriage stronger." "That's nice for them," I'd reply, not really paying attention. I was focused on my own career as a software engineer, working long hours to make senior developer. But Lauren's interest in these arrangements wasn't casual. She started bringing home books about ethical non-monogamy, podcasts about relationship anarchy, articles about the limitations of traditional marriage. She'd read me passages while I was trying to watch TV or work on my laptop. "Listen to this," she'd say, interrupting whatever I was doing. "The authors argue that expecting one person to meet all your emotional and physical needs is unrealistic and actually harmful to relationships." "Lauren, I'm trying to focus on this code review." "This is important, Michael. We never talk about these things." "Because I don't want to talk about them. I'm happy with our marriage the way it is." But Lauren wasn't happy with our marriage the way it was. Over the following months, she became increasingly critical of what she called our societal programming around monogamy. She'd point out couples we knew who seemed bored with each other, marriages that had ended in divorce, statistics about infidelity. "Look at Tom and Sarah," she'd say about our neighbors who were going through a messy separation. "They probably could have saved their marriage if they'd been more open about their needs, instead of pretending one person could be everything to each other. Or maybe they just weren't compatible," I'd counter. "Not every relationship problem is about monogamy. But don't you think it's suspicious that so many marriages fail? Maybe the problem isn't the people. Maybe it's the structure." These conversations became more frequent and more intense. Lauren would bring up the topic at dinner, during our morning coffee, while we were getting ready for bed. She seemed obsessed with proving that monogamy was fundamentally flawed. "I've been thinking about us," she said one Saturday morning while we were having breakfast, "about whether we're really choosing each other every day or just staying together out of habit." "I choose you every day," I said. "I married you because I love you." But how do you know that love is real if you've never tested it? If you've never experienced what it's like to love multiple people? I don't need to test it. I know what I feel. But feelings can be illusions, Michael. They can be based on fear or social conditioning rather than authentic choice. I was getting tired of these philosophical discussions about the nature of love and commitment. We'd been having variations of this conversation for months, and I could see where Lauren was heading with all this theory. The breaking point came during a dinner party at our friend Jessica's house. The group included several of Lauren's coworkers, and the conversation naturally turned to relationships. One couple, Emma and David, spoke openly about their polyamorous lifestyle. "The key is communication," Emma explained. "We tell each other everything. When David started dating Rachel, it actually brought us closer together because we had to really talk about our feelings instead of just assuming we understood each other." "Wasn't it hard at first?" asked Jessica. "Being jealous or insecure?" "Of course," David admitted, "but jealousy is just fear wearing a mask. When you address the fear directly, fear of abandonment, fear of not being enough, the jealousy loses its power." Lauren hung on every word, asking follow-up questions, nodding enthusiastically. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. On the drive home, she was buzzing with excitement. That was so enlightening. Emma and David seemed so much more connected than most couples we know. "They seemed nice," I said noncommittally. "Nice? Michael, they've figured out something that most people never do. They've transcended jealousy and possessiveness. They've created a relationship based on genuine choice rather than social obligation. If that works for them, great, but it's not for me." "How do you know if you've never tried it?" And there it was, the question I'd been dreading. Because I know myself, Lauren. I know what I want in a relationship. But what if what you think you want is just programming? What if there's a better way to love that you've never considered? We argued about this for weeks. Lauren had become convinced that our marriage was stagnant, that we were staying together out of habit rather than choice, that we needed to shake things up to rediscover our connection. "I'm not saying we should get divorced," she'd say. "I'm saying we should give ourselves permission to grow, to explore, to become more fully ourselves." "I'm already fully myself," I'd respond. "I don't need to date other people to figure out who I am." "But don't you want to know what else is possible? Don't you want to know if what we have is real or just comfortable?" The pressure was relentless. Lauren had clearly made up her mind about what our relationship needed, and she wasn't going to drop the subject until I agreed to try polyamory. Finally, during one particularly intense conversation, I snapped. "Fine," I said. "If this is so important to you, if you're so convinced that our marriage needs this, then let's try it. But I think you're going to realize that what we have is already pretty good." Lauren's face lit up like I'd just given her the best gift imaginable. "Really? You're willing to explore this with me? I'm willing to try it for a few months to prove to you that we don't need it. Oh, Michael, this is going to be so good for us. I can feel it." Her enthusiasm was almost insulting. My wife was more excited about the prospect of dating other people than she'd been about anything related to our marriage in months. We set some basic rules: honesty about what we were doing, safe sex always, no bringing people to our house, and either of us could call it off at any time if we weren't comfortable. Lauren agreed to these terms, though I could tell she thought the rules were unnecessarily restrictive. Within a week, Lauren had created profiles on multiple dating apps. She approached the whole thing with the systematic enthusiasm she brought to work projects. She had spreadsheets tracking her conversations, categories for different types of connections she wanted to explore, even a color-coded calendar to manage her dating schedule. "I'm not just looking for hookups," she explained as she showed me her elaborate organizational system. "I want to explore different types of intimacy. Emotional connections, intellectual connections, physical connections. I want to understand the full spectrum of human relationships." Meanwhile, I half-heartedly created a profile on one app and swiped through a few women without much interest. The whole thing felt forced and artificial to me. I was happy with my wife. I didn't want to explore different types of intimacy with strangers. But Lauren was thriving. Within 2 weeks, she was going on 3 or 4 dates per week. She'd come home energized, full of stories about the fascinating people she was meeting, the deep conversations she was having, the new perspectives she was gaining. "I had dinner with this artist, Ryan, and he had such an interesting take on creativity and vulnerability," she'd tell me, her eyes bright with excitement. "And then I met with Sophia, who's a therapist, and we talked for hours about emotional intelligence and self-awareness." "That sounds nice," I'd say, trying to match her enthusiasm, but mostly feeling left out of her excitement about her new life. "You should really put more effort into this, Michael. I think you'd surprise yourself with what you discover." But I wasn't discovering anything except that I missed having my wife's attention focused on me and our relationship. Lauren was so busy exploring connections with other people that she seemed to have lost interest in exploring our connection. Our conversations became dominated by her dating life. She'd analyze her interactions with her new partners, seek my advice about relationship dynamics with people I'd never met, share insights she'd gained from her various romantic and sexual experiences. "Ryan helped me realize that I've been suppressing my creative side," she'd say. "And Sophia is teaching me so much about communicating my needs more directly." "I could have helped you with those things," I'd point out. "But you can't, Michael. That's the point. No one person can be everything to another person. Different people bring out different aspects of who we are." After a month of watching my wife bloom in her relationships with other people, while our marriage became increasingly utilitarian, I decided to make a genuine effort at dating. Maybe Lauren was right. Maybe I needed to experience what she was experiencing to understand what I was missing. I matched with a woman named Sarah on the app. She was a marketing manager at a nonprofit, smart, funny, attractive. When I told her about my situation, that I was married and exploring polyamory, she was understanding and interested. "I've been poly for about 2 years," she said over coffee on our first date. "It's not for everyone, but for some people, it really opens up possibilities for growth and connection." Sarah was easy to talk to, and I found myself enjoying her company more than I'd expected. She was interested in my work, asked thoughtful questions about my life, made me laugh in ways I hadn't laughed in months. "How are you finding the transition to polyamory?" she asked. "Honestly, it was my wife's idea. I'm still figuring out if it's for me." That's normal. A lot of people feel resistance at first, especially if they've been raised with very traditional ideas about relationships. Over the following weeks, Sarah and I continued seeing each other. She was patient with my uncertainty about polyamory, helping me process my feelings without pressuring me to embrace the lifestyle. We had great conversations, genuine chemistry, and increasingly intimate physical connection. But more than that, Sarah made me feel appreciated in ways I'd forgotten were possible. She was genuinely interested in my thoughts, excited to spend time with me, grateful for my attention. She made me feel special, desired, valued. "I really enjoy being with you," she told me after we'd been seeing each other for a month. "You're thoughtful and funny and incredibly sweet." When was the last time Lauren had said something like that to me? When was the last time my wife had made me feel like she was lucky to be with me, rather than taking my presence for granted? Meanwhile, Lauren was deeper into her exploration than ever. She was now seeing 4 different people regularly. Ryan the artist, Sophia the therapist, Marcus the entrepreneur, and Jamie the musician. She had something scheduled almost every night of the week. "This is exactly what I needed," she told me one rare evening when we were both home. "I feel like I'm discovering parts of myself I didn't even know existed." "What parts?" I asked. "Well, with Ryan, I'm exploring my creative side. We paint together. We go to art galleries. We talk about beauty and inspiration. With Sophia, I'm diving deep into emotional intelligence and self-awareness. She's helping me understand patterns in my behavior that I've never recognized. Marcus challenges me intellectually. We have these incredible debates about philosophy and ethics. And Jamie brings out this playful, spontaneous side of me that I'd completely buried." "And what do I bring out in you?" I asked. Lauren paused, clearly not having considered this question. "You're stable, reliable. You're my anchor." Stable, reliable, an anchor. Not exactly the passionate, exciting terms she used to describe her other relationships. "Is that all?" I pressed. "Michael, you're my husband. You're the foundation everything else is built on. That's incredibly important." But I didn't want to be just a foundation. I wanted to be someone who brought out exciting sides of Lauren, someone she talked about with the enthusiasm she showed for Ryan's creativity or Marcus's intellect. 3 months into our experiment, I was spending more and more time with Sarah. She'd become my primary connection outside of my marriage, and I was beginning to understand what Lauren meant about different people bringing out different aspects of yourself. Sarah brought out a confidence in me that I'd lost somewhere along the way. She made me feel interesting, attractive, worth pursuing. With her, I remembered what it felt like to be desired rather than simply accepted. "I need to tell you something," Sarah said one evening as we lay in her bed after making love. "I'm falling for you." The words hit me harder than I'd expected. "Sarah, I know this is complicated. I know you're married, but I wanted you to know that this isn't casual for me anymore. What we have means something real to me." I realized with a shock that it meant something real to me too. Somewhere along the way, my relationship with Sarah had become more than just an experiment in polyamory. It had become a genuine romantic connection that was fulfilling needs I didn't even realize weren't being met in my marriage. "It means something real to me too," I admitted. That night, I lay awake thinking about what this meant for my marriage. Was this what Lauren had wanted? For both of us to develop meaningful connections with other people? Or had she expected me to dabble while she did the serious exploring? I got my answer a few days later when Lauren asked about my dating life. "How are things going with that woman you've been seeing, Sarah?" "Good. Really good, actually." "What do you mean, really good?" Something in her tone made me look up from my laptop. Lauren was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I mean, we have a real connection. She's incredible." "Incredible how?" "She's smart, funny, creative. She makes me feel appreciated." Lauren's expression darkened slightly. "Appreciated?" "Yes. She's interested in my thoughts, my work, my dreams. She makes me feel like spending time with me is something special, not just an obligation." "I don't treat spending time with you like an obligation." "Don't you? When was the last time you seemed excited to see me? When was the last time you asked about my work because you were genuinely curious, not just making conversation?" Lauren was quiet for a moment. "I've been busy exploring these new connections." "That doesn't mean I don't value our relationship, but it means you've been taking our relationship for granted while investing your energy in relationships with other people. That's not what polyamory is about, Michael. It's about expanding our capacity for love, not replacing one relationship with others." "But that's exactly what's happened. You've expanded your capacity for love with everyone except me." This conversation was the beginning of a shift in our dynamic. Lauren was starting to realize that her husband wasn't just passively accepting her new lifestyle. He was actively participating in it and finding genuine fulfillment elsewhere. The tension came to a head 2 weeks later when Lauren came home early from a date to find me getting ready to go out. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To see Sarah. We're going to a concert." "You're seeing her twice this week?" "So, you see Marcus twice this week." "That's different?" "How is it different?" Lauren struggled to articulate an answer. "It just is. Marcus and I are exploring intellectual intimacy. You and Sarah are?" "Are what?" "I don't know. What are you and Sarah?" "We're falling in love," I said simply. The words landed between us like a bomb. Lauren's face went through several expressions: shock, hurt, anger, confusion. "Falling in love? Michael, that's not what this was supposed to be about." "What was it supposed to be about?" "Exploration, growth, expanding our understanding of relationships. Not falling in love with other people." "But you're falling in love with other people. You talk about Ryan and Sophia and Marcus like they're the most fascinating people on earth. That's different. They're connections, not replacements." "Neither is Sarah. But yes, I'm falling in love with her, and she's falling in love with me. Isn't that what polyamory is supposed to make possible?" Lauren was clearly struggling with this development. The polyamory she'd envisioned apparently involved her exploring multiple connections, while I remained safely anchored to our marriage, grateful for whatever attention she had left over. "I need you to slow things down with Sarah," she said finally. "Why?" "Because this is moving too fast, because you're getting too emotionally involved. But you're emotionally involved with multiple people." "That's different, Michael. I'm not replacing you with them." "I'm not replacing you with Sarah either. I thought the whole point was that we could love multiple people without diminishing our love for each other." Lauren's face was flushed with frustration. "The point was to strengthen our marriage, not to threaten it." "How is me finding happiness with someone else threatening our marriage? Aren't you happy that I'm happy?" But Lauren wasn't happy that I was happy. She was upset that my happiness was coming from someone else, especially someone who was making me realize how much I'd been missing in my marriage. The fight that followed was explosive. Lauren accused me of using polyamory as an excuse to have an affair. I accused her of being a hypocrite who wanted freedom for herself, but security from me. She said I was being selfish and reckless. I said she was being controlling and manipulative. "This isn't how polyamory is supposed to work," Lauren kept saying. "Then how is it supposed to work?" I asked. "You get to explore multiple relationships while I wait at home grateful for scraps of your attention? You're supposed to be growing too, but not in ways that threaten us. The only thing threatening us is your double standard." After that fight, Lauren became increasingly uncomfortable with my relationship with Sarah. She'd make passive-aggressive comments about how much time I was spending with her, ask pointed questions about what we talked about, seem hurt when I came home happy from our dates. "I just don't understand why you need so much from her," Lauren said one evening. "What is she giving you that I'm not?" "Attention, appreciation, the feeling that I matter to someone." "You matter to me." "Do I? When was the last time you seemed excited to see me come home? When was the last time you asked me about my day because you genuinely wanted to know, not just because it's what married people are supposed to do?" Lauren was quiet for a long moment. "I've been distracted by all these new relationships." "Exactly. You've been so busy exploring connections with other people that you've forgotten to maintain the connection with your husband." "But that's temporary. Once I figure out what I need from these other relationships, I'll be able to bring that energy back to us. But I'm not going to wait around hoping you eventually remember that I exist. I've found someone who already knows I exist, and she makes me feel incredible." This was clearly not the outcome Lauren had envisioned when she pushed us toward polyamory. She'd expected to be the one doing the exploring, while I remained her stable, reliable foundation. The idea that I might find someone who valued me more than she did was apparently unthinkable. 4 months into our experiment, Sarah told me she loved me. We were walking along the Columbia River after dinner, and she stopped suddenly, took my hands, and looked into my eyes. "I love you, Michael. I know this situation is complicated, but I need you to know that what I feel for you is real and deep and unlike anything I've experienced before." "I love you too," I said, and I meant it completely. That night, I realized I was at a crossroads. I had to decide whether to continue trying to make polyamory work in a marriage where I felt increasingly devalued, or to pursue the relationship where I felt genuinely cherished. When I got home, Lauren was waiting up for me, which was unusual. She'd been coming home later and later from her own dates, often going straight to bed without checking in. "We need to talk," she said as soon as I walked in. "Okay. I've been thinking about this whole arrangement, and I think we need to scale it back." "Scale it back how?" "I think we should focus on our marriage for a while, put the dating on hold, and reconnect with each other." "Why now?" I asked, though I suspected I knew the answer. "Because I can see that this is pulling us apart instead of bringing us together." "It's pulling us apart because you've been treating our marriage like a home base while you explore more exciting relationships elsewhere." "That's not what I've been doing." "Isn't it? You're full of energy and enthusiasm when you talk about Ryan or Sophia or Marcus, but when you talk to me, it's like you're going through the motions." Lauren looked hurt. "That's not fair." "It's completely fair. You pushed us into this arrangement because you thought our marriage was stagnant and boring. And then you proceeded to treat our marriage like it was stagnant and boring while investing all your energy in relationships with other people. I was exploring what was possible. And I was exploring what was possible too. And I found Sarah. At the mention of Sarah's name, Lauren's expression hardened. "Sarah is the problem." "How is Sarah the problem?" "She's making you dissatisfied with our marriage." "Our marriage is making me dissatisfied with our marriage. Sarah is just showing me what it feels like to be valued. You're valued here." "Am I? You've been treating me like a roommate for months, someone to split the bills with while you have your real emotional and physical connections elsewhere." Lauren was quiet for several minutes, clearly struggling with the reality of what our experiment had revealed. "I want us to close the relationship," she said finally. "Go back to monogamy and work on us." What about all your theories about monogamy being limiting and artificial? What about expanding our capacity for love? I think I was wrong about some of that. Or you were wrong about expecting me to remain satisfied with being your backup plan while you explored better options. You're not my backup plan, Michael. You're my husband. Then start treating me like someone you chose rather than someone you settled for. But the damage was done. Months of feeling like a secondary priority in my own marriage had taken their toll. More importantly, my relationship with Sarah had shown me what it felt like to be someone's first choice, and I wasn't sure I could go back to feeling like an afterthought. I need time to think about this, I told Lauren. Think about what? We're married, Michael. We made vows. We made vows about being faithful to each other, and then you convinced me to break those vows because you thought there was something better out there. This was always supposed to be temporary. For you, maybe, but I've discovered something real with Sarah, and I'm not sure I want to give that to go back to being taken for granted. The look on Lauren's face was a mixture of shock, hurt, and anger. So you're choosing her over me? I'm choosing someone who chooses me over someone who treats me like a convenience. That night, Lauren and I had the biggest fight of our marriage. She accused me of using polyamory as an excuse to cheat. I accused her of being a hypocrite who wanted freedom for herself, but loyalty from me. She said I was abandoning our marriage. I said she had abandoned our marriage months ago when she decided other people were more interesting than her husband. This isn't what I wanted, she kept saying. What did you want? I asked. I wanted us to grow together. I wanted us to become better partners by understanding more about love and relationships. But you didn't want us to grow together. You wanted to grow while I stayed the same. You wanted to explore while I remained your stable foundation. That's not true. Then why are you so upset about me having a meaningful relationship with someone else? Isn't that exactly what you've been doing for months? Lauren couldn't answer because she knew I was right. She'd been so caught up in her own exploration that she'd never considered that I might find something valuable in my exploration too. The next few weeks were tense and difficult. Lauren ended her relationships with Ryan, Sophia, Marcus, and Jamie, apparently hoping that closing her side of the arrangement would convince me to close mine. But I wasn't ready to end things with Sarah, especially not to return to a marriage where I'd felt invisible for months. I made a mistake, Lauren admitted one evening. I got caught up in the excitement of new relationships, and I forgot to nurture what we had. Yes, you did. Can't we fix this? Can't we go to counseling and work on our marriage? Maybe, but not if it means giving up Sarah. You can't have both, Michael. You can't have a marriage and a girlfriend. Why not? That's exactly what you had for months. Multiple relationships that were meaningful to you. But I ended those relationships. I chose us. You ended those relationships because you realized I wasn't going to sit around waiting for you indefinitely, not because you genuinely chose us. Lauren was crying now. I love you, Michael. I don't want to lose our marriage. I love you too, but I also love Sarah, and she loves me in ways that make me feel alive again. What does that mean for us? I don't know. Over the following month, I struggled with an impossible decision. On one hand, I had 6 years of marriage with Lauren, a shared history, a house, plans we'd made together. On the other hand, I had a relationship with Sarah that was passionate, affirming, and made me feel valued in ways I'd forgotten were possible. The decision was made for me when Lauren issued an ultimatum. I can't live like this, she said. I can't be married to someone who's in love with someone else. Either you end things with Sarah and commit to working on our marriage, or I want a divorce. Lauren, you were in love with multiple people for months. How is this different? Because I ended those relationships. I chose us, but you're not choosing us. I'm trying to choose both. That's not an option anymore. Choose. I spent 3 sleepless nights thinking about Lauren's ultimatum. On one level, she was right. It wasn't fair to her to remain married while I was in love with someone else. But on another level, her demand felt like another attempt to control the situation to her advantage. Finally, I made my choice. I choose Sarah, I told Lauren. The pain on her face was immediate and devastating. You're choosing someone you've known for 4 months over someone you've been with for 8 years? I'm choosing someone who values me over someone who took me for granted until she realized I had other options. Michael, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. I can be better. You can be better for the next person, Lauren, but I'm done being someone's second choice. The divorce process was messy and painful. Lauren alternated between begging me to reconsider and being furiously angry about what she saw as my betrayal. She told our friends and family that I'd used polyamory as an excuse to have an affair, conveniently leaving out that polyamory had been her idea and that she'd been in multiple relationships while expecting me to remain focused solely on our marriage. Some people sided with Lauren, seeing me as the husband who abandoned his marriage for a newer, more exciting relationship. Others understood that Lauren had created the conditions that led to our divorce by pushing us into polyamory while taking our marriage for granted. Sarah was incredibly patient and supportive throughout the divorce process. She never pressured me to move faster or demanded that I choose her over my marriage. She simply loved me consistently and let me make my own decisions about what was best for my life. "I want you to be happy?" she told me during one of the hardest weeks of the divorce proceedings. "If staying married to Lauren would make you happier, I'd understand." "You make me happy," I said. "You make me feel like the best version of myself." "And you make me feel the same way." A year after my divorce was finalized, Sarah and I moved in together. The relationship that had begun as part of a polyamory experiment had evolved into the most fulfilling monogamous relationship of my life. "Do you ever miss being polyamorous?" I asked Sarah one evening as we cooked dinner together. "No," she said without hesitation. "I was polyamorous because I hadn't found someone who could be everything I needed in a partner. But with you, I don't feel like anything is missing." "I feel the same way. Do you regret how we started? The fact that you were married when we met?" I considered the question carefully. "I regret that my marriage had to end for us to be together. I regret that Lauren got hurt. But I don't regret finding you." "Even though it meant breaking up your marriage?" "My marriage broke up because Lauren forgot that partnerships require ongoing effort and appreciation. She got so focused on what she thought was missing that she stopped valuing what was actually there." 2 years after our divorce, I ran into Lauren at a coffee shop in downtown Portland. She looked good, happier, and more relaxed than she'd seemed in the final months of our marriage. "Michael," she said, approaching my table cautiously. "How are you?" "I'm good. Really good. How are you?" "I'm doing well. I'm seeing someone new, actually. Just one person," she added with a rueful smile. "I think I learned some things about myself from our experiment." "What did you learn?" "That I was looking for external solutions to internal problems. I thought polyamory would fix what was wrong with our marriage. But the real problem was that I'd stopped putting effort into appreciating what I had." "I'm glad you figured that out." "I'm sorry, Michael, for how everything happened. For pushing you into something you weren't comfortable with and then being angry when you found what you were looking for. I'm sorry, too, for how it ended, for the pain we both went through." "Are you happy?" she asked. "I'm very happy. Sarah and I are engaged." Lauren smiled, though I could see it was difficult for her. "I'm glad. You deserve someone who values you." "You deserve that too, Lauren." As I walked away from that encounter, I reflected on how our experiment in polyamory had taught us both important lessons, just not the ones we'd expected. Lauren learned that grass is greener thinking can cost you what you already have. I learned that I was worth more than being someone's safe, reliable backup plan. 3 years after our divorce, Sarah and I got married in a small ceremony surrounded by friends and family who had supported us through the complicated beginning of our relationship. During our vows, I promised to choose her every day, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. "I promise to never take you for granted," I said, looking into her eyes. "I promise to see you as a choice I'm grateful to make, not an obligation I'm fulfilling." Sarah's vows were equally meaningful. "I promise to love you not because you're perfect, but because you're perfect for me. I promise to value what we have, not just when it's new and exciting, but especially when it becomes familiar and comfortable." The irony wasn't lost on me that my ex-wife's push for us to explore polyamory had led me to find the most satisfying monogamous relationship of my life. Lauren had been right that our marriage needed something. It needed partners who genuinely valued each other. She just hadn't realized that I wasn't the problem with our dynamic. Sarah and I have now been together for 5 years, married for 2. We've never discussed opening our relationship or exploring polyamory. Not because we're afraid of it, but because we've found everything we need in each other. Sometimes Lauren's friends or our mutual acquaintances will ask if I feel guilty about how things ended, if I regret leaving my marriage for someone I'd known for such a short time. My answer is always the same. I didn't leave my marriage for Sarah. I left my marriage because it wasn't fulfilling my needs, and I found Sarah because she could fulfill needs I didn't even know I had. The lesson I learned from that painful experience is that love isn't enough to sustain a relationship. You also need appreciation, effort, and the daily choice to value your partner. Lauren had stopped making that choice long before we tried polyamory. The experiment just made it visible to both of us. I'm grateful for that clarity, even though it cost us our marriage. Better to end a relationship that isn't working than to spend years in something unsatisfying out of habit or fear of change. Lauren's push for polyamory was ultimately a gift. It forced us both to confront what was missing in our marriage and find what we actually needed in relationships. Today, when I come home from work, Sarah greets me like she's genuinely happy to see me. When I talk about my day, she listens with real interest. When we make plans together, she's excited about our shared future. These might seem like small things, but they're the foundation of a relationship where both people feel valued and chosen. Lauren eventually found someone who appreciates her too. According to mutual friends, she's in a committed monogamous relationship with someone who shares her interests and values her attention. I'm genuinely happy for her. Everyone deserves to be with someone who sees their worth without needing to shop around for comparison. The experience taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do in a relationship is leave when it's not serving either person well. Lauren and I were both settling for something that wasn't bringing out the best in either of us. By ending our marriage, we both got the chance to find relationships that actually fulfill us. I don't recommend polyamory as a solution for relationship problems. If you're not feeling valued in your current relationship, the answer isn't usually to date other people. It's to address the underlying issues with your partner or end the relationship if those issues can't be resolved. But I do recommend having the courage to pursue relationships where you feel genuinely cherished. Life is too short to spend it with someone who treats your love as guaranteed rather than precious. Sarah and I now have a daughter, Emma, who just turned 1. Watching Sarah become a mother has been incredible. She approaches parenthood with the same intentionality and appreciation she brings to our marriage. She tells Emma every day how lucky we are to have her, how much joy she brings to our lives. I want her to grow up knowing she's valued. Sarah told me as we watched Emma sleep in her crib. I want her to understand that love is something you choose and nurture, not something you take for granted. She'll learn that from watching us, I said. I hope so. I hope we can model what it looks like to choose each other every day. That conversation reminded me of something important. The patterns we establish in our relationships don't just affect us. They teach the people around us what love looks like. Lauren and I had fallen into a pattern of taking each other for granted, assuming our love was permanent, regardless of how much effort we put into maintaining it. That's not the kind of marriage I want Emma to think is normal. Last month, I got a LinkedIn message from Marcus, one of the men Lauren had been seeing during our polyamory experiment. He'd apparently gone through his own relationship upheaval and wanted to share his perspective on what had happened. I owe you an apology, he wrote. I was so focused on the excitement of a new connection with Lauren that I didn't really consider the impact on your marriage. Looking back, I can see that she was using her relationships with me and others to avoid dealing with problems in your marriage rather than addressing them directly. I appreciate you saying that, I replied. But honestly, the outcome was probably for the best. Lauren and I weren't right for each other in the long term. Maybe not, but I still feel like I contributed to the breakdown of something that might have been fixable with different choices. The breakdown started long before you came into the picture. You were just part of Lauren's attempt to find external solutions to internal relationship problems. Marcus and I ended up having coffee a few weeks later. He'd gotten married recently to someone he met after Lauren ended their relationship, and he had some interesting insights about the difference between healthy and unhealthy non-monogamy. The thing about Lauren, he said, was that she seemed to be running away from intimacy rather than toward it. Like she was more comfortable with the excitement of new connections than with the work of deepening existing ones. That's exactly right. She wanted the novelty without the vulnerability. My wife and I talked about trying polyamory early in our relationship, Marcus continued. But we decided against it because we realized we were both still learning how to be fully present with one person. We figured we should master monogamy before we tried to manage multiple relationships. How's that working out for you? Really well. There's something to be said for going deep with one person instead of staying shallow with many. This conversation helped me understand something I'd been thinking about for years. Lauren hadn't really wanted polyamory. She'd wanted an escape from the ordinary challenges of long-term commitment. She'd wanted the excitement and novelty of dating without giving up the security and comfort of marriage. But real intimacy requires staying present through the boring parts, the difficult parts, the parts where your partner isn't shiny and new anymore. Lauren had never learned how to find excitement and growth within the context of commitment. Sarah, on the other hand, seems to understand that choosing someone every day is what makes love meaningful. She doesn't need external validation or novel experiences to feel fulfilled in our relationship. She finds excitement in our growing deeper connection, in discovering new layers of each other over time. Do you ever get bored? I asked her recently during one of our evening walks. With you? Never. With routine sometimes. But that's different. How is it different? Being bored with routine means maybe we need to try new activities or go on a trip or change our schedule. Being bored with a person means you're not seeing them clearly anymore, and that's a choice. What do you mean? I mean, you can choose to see your partner as someone familiar and therefore boring, or you can choose to see them as someone you're constantly getting to know more deeply. People are incredibly complex. If you're bored with someone, you're probably not paying attention. This is the fundamental difference between my relationship with Sarah and my marriage to Lauren. With Lauren, familiarity bred contempt, or at least indifference. The longer we were together, the less interesting we became to each other. With Sarah, familiarity breeds deeper intimacy. The longer we're together, the more I appreciate the complexity and richness of who she is. I think this is why Lauren's polyamory experiment ultimately failed. She was looking for external stimulation to compensate for her inability to find ongoing interest in the people she was closest to. But no amount of external relationships can fix an internal capacity problem. Recently, Emma started walking, and Sarah and I spent an evening watching videos of her first steps, laughing and marveling at our daughter's determination. As we sat on the couch together, Sarah's head on my shoulder, I felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life we've built together. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" "For seeing me. For choosing me. For making me feel like the luckiest person alive." "Thank you for the same things." This is what Lauren and I never had, the sense that we were both incredibly fortunate to have found each other. With Lauren, our relationship felt like something we'd settled into rather than something we'd chosen. With Sarah, even after 5 years together, I still feel like I won the lottery. I sometimes wonder if Lauren ever achieved this kind of contentment with her new partner. I hope she did. Everyone deserves to experience the peace that comes from being truly seen and valued by someone they love. The last time we communicated was about a year ago, when she sent me a brief email letting me know she was getting married. "I wanted you to hear it from me first," she wrote. "I've learned so much about relationships since our divorce, and I'm in a much better place now. I hope you and Sarah are happy." I was genuinely pleased to hear from her and to know that she'd found someone who could appreciate her. Whatever mistakes she made in our marriage, Lauren is a good person who deserves love and partnership. I wrote back, "Congratulations on your engagement. I'm happy that you found someone who values what you bring to a relationship. Sarah and I are very happy. Emma is walking now and keeping us on our toes. I wish you and your fiancé all the best." She replied, "Thank you. And Michael? I'm sorry for how everything went down between us. I know I handled things badly. You deserved better than what I gave you in those last months of our marriage." "We both learned important things from that experience," I wrote back. "I hope your new relationship benefits from the wisdom you gained." And that was it. A peaceful end to a complicated chapter. Looking back now, I can see that Lauren's push for polyamory was actually her way of trying to save our marriage, even though it ended up destroying it. She could sense that something was missing between us, but instead of doing the hard work of figuring out what that was and addressing it directly, she looked for external solutions. The tragedy is that what was missing wasn't something polyamory could fix. What was missing was appreciation, attention, gratitude, the daily choice to see each other as people worth knowing deeply. You can't get those things from dating other people. You can only get them by changing how you show up in your existing relationship. But sometimes it takes losing something to understand its value. Maybe Lauren needed to lose our marriage to learn how to be a better partner. Maybe I needed to experience being truly valued by Sarah to understand what I'd been missing with Lauren. Either way, I'm grateful for how everything worked out. Not because I enjoyed the pain of divorce or the complexity of untangling a 6-year marriage, but because it led me to a relationship that fulfills me in ways I didn't know were possible. Sarah and I talk sometimes about the early days of our relationship, about the ethical complications of falling in love while I was still married, about whether we did the right thing. "Do you think we were wrong?" she asked me recently. "To pursue a relationship when you were still married?" "I think we were human," I said. Lauren opened that door by insisting on polyamory. We walked through it and found something real. But what if she'd handled things differently? What if she'd put the same energy into your marriage that she put into her other relationships? Then maybe our marriage would have survived. But that's not what happened. She made different choices, and so did I. Do you think less of me for being willing to date a married man? This is a question Sarah has asked me several times over the years, and my answer is always the same. I think you were brave enough to pursue genuine connection in a complicated situation. I think you were honest about your feelings and patient with my process. I think you behaved with more integrity than most people would have in that situation. Even though it meant the end of your marriage, my marriage ended because it wasn't working, not because you existed. If it hadn't been you, it would have been someone else eventually, or it would have been a slow decline into resentment and divorce anyway. I truly believe this. Lauren and I were heading for trouble long before we tried polyamory. The experiment just accelerated a process that was already underway. The difference is that without polyamory, we might have spent years being unhappy before finally ending things. Instead, we got clarity about what we both needed and were able to find it, even though it meant finding it with different people. This year marks 5 years since my divorce from Lauren and 4 years of marriage to Sarah. Emma is walking and talking and filling our house with laughter. Sarah and I are deeper in love than ever, not because our relationship is new and exciting, but because we've chosen to build something meaningful together. Last week, Sarah surprised me with a weekend trip to the Oregon coast for my birthday. As we walked along the beach, watching Emma chase seagulls, I felt that same sense of gratitude that has become a constant in my life with Sarah. What are you thinking about? Sarah asked, noticing my contemplative mood. Just how different my life is now compared to 5 years ago. Better different? Or just different? Much, much better different. Even considering all the pain and complication it took to get here? Especially considering that, the pain taught me what I really needed in a relationship. The complication taught me that easy isn't always better than authentic. Sarah took my hand. I'm grateful Lauren pushed for polyamory, you know? Really? Why? Because if she hadn't, you might have stayed in an unsatisfying marriage out of loyalty or fear, and I never would have met the love of my life. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and I sat on the deck of our rental house, watching the sunset over the Pacific Ocean. We talked about our plans for the upcoming year, about Emma's development, about work projects we were excited about. Normal, domestic conversation that felt precious because we were having it together. I love our life, Sarah said as the sky turned pink and orange. I love our life too. Do you think Emma will understand when she's older? About how we met and how your first marriage ended? I think we'll tell her the truth in age-appropriate ways. That sometimes adults make mistakes and have to fix them. That sometimes people aren't right for each other, even though they both try. That love is a choice you make every day, not just a feeling you have once. And that sometimes the most important thing you can do is leave a situation that isn't working so you can find one that does. Exactly. As I write this, Sarah is in the kitchen making dinner, while Emma plays with blocks on the living room floor. It's an ordinary Tuesday evening, the kind of unremarkable domestic scene that Lauren would have found boring and stifling. But to me, it represents everything I was missing in my first marriage. The sense of being exactly where I want to be, with exactly the people I want to be with. This is the life Lauren's polyamory experiment ultimately gave me. Not the one she intended, but the one I needed. A relationship built on genuine appreciation, daily choice, and the understanding that love is something you do, not just something you feel. I hope Lauren found something similar with her new husband. I hope she learned to see familiar love as precious rather than boring. I hope she discovered that the grass isn't always greener on the other side. Sometimes you just need to water the grass you already have. But if you can't water the grass you have, if you're with someone who can't appreciate what you bring to their life, then maybe the kindest thing you can do for both of you is to give them permission to find someone who can, and give yourself permission to find someone who will. That's what Lauren's ultimatum ultimately did for me. It forced me to choose between someone who took me for granted and someone who treasured me. When the choice was that clear, the decision was easy. I chose to be treasured, and every day since then, I've been grateful for that choice.